Hello, Steve Surfoss here, continuing with this series of videos on why God threw away the rules. If you're just jumping in at this point, let me say we're in the middle of a series of videos that commenting in the book of Hebrews, this subject of why God threw away the rules. I really recommend, we're in Hebrews 8 right now, but I'd really recommend that you get in on the whole section on Hebrews, and to do that you would go back to why God threw away the rules, video number 7. And follow through. But of course you're welcome to follow on at this point. We have already read in the previous video Hebrews 8 starting from verse 1, and so now I just want to make some comments about that. Hebrews 8:1, he says the point of what we're saying is that we do have such a high priest who sat down at the right hand of the throne of majesty in heaven and who serves in the sanctuary. And here's a beautiful thing. I've received some correspondence from people who want to, as Christians, go back and they kind of say, well, let's do the rituals and let's do the feast and let's do this and let's do that, and how beautiful it'd be. And I really, it's really been precious to my heart what is in these verses right here. And I think it really helps us to appreciate, we'll learn things. But let me go ahead and share that. He says, he and who serves, we have this great high priest who sat down at the right hand of the throne of majesty in heaven, and who serves in the sanctuary, the true tabernacle. Okay, which is the true tabernacle? And he says, the true tabernacle set up by the Lord, not by men. And he's going to talk some more about this tabernacle. And learning about this true tabernacle really lets us know where our loyalties and our hearts belong. But he goes on to say, every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices, and so it was necessary for this one also to have something to offer. The author of Hebrews here is talking to people, that's why it's called the Hebrews, to Jewish people from Jewish background. And he's trying to compare, not comparing, but he's saying really, not comparing, but saying how Christianity is superior to the system and everything that they had in Judaism. So he's saying there's basic things that we would need here. The priest, well, we got the high priest. But if we have a high priest, he has to have a place to do his vocation or to exercise his priesthood, and he has to have a sacrifice or sacrifices to offer. So and so he's saying right here, it's necessary he has sacrifices, and so is necessary for this one also to have something to offer. And he says if he were on earth, he would not be a priest, for there are already men who offer the gifts prescribed by the law. So again, he's pulling out here. He's not in any way trying to confuse us and fuse Jesus and his ministry as a priest in with the old law. He's saying, if Jesus was here on earth, he would not even be a priest, because there's already people here doing the things that the law prescribes. So if it was a thing of if all God wanted was to keep having priests under the law offer this, we already had those. He wouldn't have had to send Jesus Christ. But he would not even be a priest. He says, these men already prescribed by the law, they serve at a sanctuary. By the way, just on a note of apologetics that we could say here, the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70 after AD. The fact that he's talking here, they serve at a sanctuary in a present tense, is leads us to understand that the Epistle to the Hebrews was written before the year 70. Again, you can give the weight to that you want, but most of us would say, wow, that shows that when he wrote this, it was not yet the year 70. The temple was still there, and it was still functioning. So they serve at a sanctuary that is a copy and shadow of what is in heaven. Now this is what gets very precious. This is a copy and a shadow of what is in heaven. What does he base that on? He says, this is why Moses was warned when he was about to build the tabernacle. See to it that you make everything according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So he says the tabernacle that Moses made was just a copy of what? And he says the tabernacle, they serve a sanctuary as a copy of shadow of what is in heaven. So what he's telling us here is that God on the mountain showed Moses the tabernacle in heaven. God on that mountain showed Moses the tabernacle in heaven. He said, make the tabernacle here a copy of that one. So the tabernacle here is just a copy or a shadow of what is in heaven. And that's why God warned him, see that to it that you make everything according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. Now I'm going to take the liberty here to jump a little ahead in Hebrews, just to share with you how precious that this fact of this tabernacle is, and how magnificent this is. What the Bible is telling us here is that Moses was shown that there was already a tabernacle in heaven. Now Moses dated as you want, but many centuries before Christ. God already had a tabernacle built in heaven. Why did he have that tabernacle there hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before Christ? As we go through the book of Hebrews, we're going to say that tabernacle was built there, and it was waiting, sitting there, finished, waiting for one single high priest to come and offer one single sacrifice that was going to be sufficient for all the sins of all of mankind. Think about the expectation. Think about we can talk about the time for God in all of this, and we see God's plan and God's timing and God seeing things from back before even the creation of the world and throughout all time, we would have to say. So here God in his timing is waiting for an intersection, I call it, of God's time and man's time. He sets up this tabernacle and he says, I'm going to send my son to earth. My son on earth is going to give a sacrifice, and I have this tabernacle waiting. And just sharing that, my dear brothers and sisters, I would like for you to say, that's greater than any Hebrew ceremony. That's greater than anything that we could pretend to do and say, let's go back and take these rituals. No, my brothers, we have had in heaven, in this tabernacle that was set up, we have had the event that counts. And that is when Jesus Christ, the high priest, went in one time and did his high priest duties in that heavenly tabernacle, who God himself in expectation had set up years before that. I hope you're blessed just thinking about that. But the ministry, going on to verse 6 here, but the ministry Jesus has received is as superior to theirs as the covenant of which he is mediator is superior to the old one, and it is founded on better promises. So the writer of Hebrews here realizes that we are under a new covenant, that we're not under the old covenant of the law, and it's such a sure fact for him that he uses that as a comparison, and he says the ministry of Jesus is superior to theirs, just as this covenant is superior to the old covenant, because it's founded on better promises. Okay, and again he goes into some reasoning about what God is teaching us here, and he says, for if there hadn't been nothing wrong with that first covenant, no place would have been sought for another one. So why are there two covenants? Well, there was something wrong with that first covenant. Now I know there's a lot of people say, oh no, that covenant was wonderful, and it's eternal and it doesn't change. Well, there was something wrong with it. If there had been nothing, let me go back and read that again. If there had been nothing wrong, okay, the word wrong, translated here, whatever it was from Greek, but if there had been nothing wrong with that first covenant, no place would have been sought for another. Okay? In verse 8, of course, he explains what was wrong. But God found fault with the people and said. So that first covenant was a deal. That first covenant was a pact between two people. And Hebrews is going to go into that. Not two people, between God and people, and his people. It had two parts. I do this, you're supposed to do this. If you do this, I will do this. If you don't do something else, then I'm going to do something else. So it had two parts. Part of it was a human part. Okay? And God found fault with the people and said. Now here, actually, it's very important to note in Hebrews that what follows is taken from Jeremiah chapter 31. So really, we're kind of, I guess we could use the expression, killing two birds with one stone here. We're looking at what Jeremiah taught, and we're looking at what Hebrews teaches. So really, there's two arguments here that combine to say why the law no longer applies to Christians. Why the law? Why? And before we get done, we'll see that here. Why Jesus Christ fulfilled the law with his one sacrifice in that heavenly tabernacle, and once it's been fulfilled, it has been superseded by a new pact. And this again is in the book of Jeremiah that he's quoting here. But God found fault with the people. We'll continue in another video.